How's everyone doing tonight? That's awesome. So, like typical black people form, we're late. White people, it's okay to laugh. So we're super excited to have you all here tonight. Super honored to be able to pass the mic to Chris Tolbert, who is like a super important dude in St. Paul. So give him a round of applause.
That's about the nicest introduction I think I've ever had. Just brief and straight to the point. I appreciate it. I'll take it. I don't know if these people will believe it. But, my name is Chris Tolbert. I'm a St. Paul City Council member. I also am co-chair with the mayor of Full Stack St. Paul. Full Stack St. Paul, startup, scale up. It's attracting, keeping, and growing innovative jobs right here in the city of St. Paul. And I just first want to thank everybody for coming to St. Paul. There is so much energy in this room, and it's a lot like St. Paul at how much energy we have going on in our community right now. I first want to make sure to thank our hosts here in Osborne. Scott Burns is one of the investors. Are there other investors here too, who have put this great building in St. Paul in partnership with Ecolab and all the companies that are coming in here. And it's a beautiful space. Every floor is beautiful, and we're excited to have it here in St. Paul, so thank you for that. I also want to thank Sharon for help. I think everybody here. Every person knows Sharon in here. If you don't, you should. Thank you for getting this event here in St. Paul. One of the pillars of Full Stack is there's three things. We're working on developing our people. We're working on developing our space, like this in Osborne and the other ones that are coming online anytime soon. And we're working on our perception here in St. Paul. And one of the things with perception is we want to make sure that you know about events here in St. Paul. And this is one of the events that we want people. I met people from Wayzata here. That's like coming across. That's like coming across the country. So thank you for coming over here. This is exciting, but St. Paul has a lot of excitement. And one of the things the reason we have excitement is because of our people. And I'll quote our mayor because I think he articulated what a lot of us have felt here in St. Paul for a long time, that our diversity is not a problem to be solved, but it's our greatest strength. And it's so true, and we're starting to embrace that. Events like this, our investment in innovation, Full Stack is really embracing that. And really, it has created an energy that I haven't seen in St. Paul since I've ever been here. It's kind of like a Hamilton song. We're young, scrappy, and hungry, and we're coming for jobs, and we want people to set up jobs here. So if you're a startup, or if you have an existing company, come to St. Paul. We want you in St. Paul. We will help you come to St. Paul. Mark Sung, who is our staff member on Full Stack, raise your hand, Mark. Reach out to him, reach out to me, reach out to Sharon, reach out to the mayor's office. We will help you be in St. Paul because we want you here. Be part of this, be part of something special. Get in right away. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of companies that are here already. Join the party. So without further ado, I just want to thank you guys for coming to St. Paul. I'm excited for this whole event, so thank you.
Really quick, Chris talked about the need or the drive to bring events to St. Paul, so I want to take this time to talk about some of the events that are coming to St. Paul. We'll start with, we're going to have mini demo that's taking place July 12th. Code Switch is back. In St. Paul at Science Museum, August the 11th and 12th. It'll be your chance to use your tech skills to solve critical issues and challenges here in the city of St. Paul. August the 11th and 12th. Also, you also know that I'm the co-founder of Blacks in Tech Twin Cities. Well, there is a Blacks in Tech, a national organization, and we're going to have our inaugural Blacks in Tech conference here in the Twin Cities. Yeah. That will take place here. I would like to take this time to recognize the national founder of Blacks in Tech, Greg Greenlee. He's here. She runs the San Diego. And I can't let this opportunity pass to recognize the co-founder of Blacks in Tech Twin Cities. That's Antoinette, my yang to my yang. She's just like, okay, let's do it. And we make it happen. So I'm excited for this event. So I want to bring to our panel, we have Clarence, founder, president and CEO of Upsy. We also have James, founder and CEO of Smart DJ. And we also, I don't think he needs any introduction. Mayor Carter. So it's a great pleasure to have each of you here tonight to dialogue about building an inclusive tech economy in the Twin Cities, but more importantly, St. Paul. So, kick it off tonight. Well, I'm going to start on that end, and we would
You're
like.
gonna start with me over the mayor? You tripping?
I just want to give you guys a chance to get it out, because once the mayor gets started, it's going to be amazing. So give you guys a chance to put it out there. So I would like for Clarence and James just to tell us who you are, a little bit about your company, and the value proposition for your company.
So my name is Clarence Bethia. I am the founder and CEO of Upsy. I think a lot of you know who we are. I always start off the pitch like, how many of you guys have ever been in the Best Buy and been pitched a warranty? Let me see your hands. Keep your hands up if you enjoyed that moment. That's what we do.
I wish I was that smooth. I have to get nerdy and stuff. So I'm nerd. At Spark DJ, so I'm James Jones, CEO, co-founder of Spark DJ. At Spark DJ, we're building innovative music entertainment to help bars and essentially music venues learn more about their customers. Yeah.
I'm Melvin Carter. I don't have as smooth a "that's what we do" mic drop moment to walk away with.
I can teach you.
Right. That'd be helpful. I will say though, the first time me and Clarence met, it was at an airport at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in like a hooded sweatshirt, and I'm like sneaking on the plane. He's like, "Hey, are you Mayor Carter?" And I'm like, "No." So I just appreciate the opportunity to be with you in a jacket.
And Clarence texted me the picture. Like at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, look who's
Right, he's
this?
like, "Can we take a picture?" And I'm like,
So, Mayor Carter, would you kick it off with us? And I'm sorry, I use my hands, so it's going to get crazy. So, can you kick it off and tell us why Techquity is important for you and why you are here tonight?
So one, I just want to say thank you all. Like, welcome to St. Paul. It's great to see you here. You know, not every room that I go into is this diverse. And so this is a lot of fun, and it's incredible to see us in this space. And I really believe that engaging with each other and getting to know each other and getting to understand each other across, in spaces that look like this is really the key to our future as a region, our future as a metropolitan area, and definitely our future as a city. I'm very, very biased, but that said, St. Paul has it going on right now. You know, I ran for mayor ultimately because, you know, I live in a city where we can still predict a child's expected life outcomes better based on her zip code and her race than based on how hard she works. And that's something that's not only unfair for her, but it's unattainable, it's unsustainable for us as a region. It's just not the way that we can really build our region, right? And when we talk about, and the super important dude from the city who is here, our city council member, talked about my belief that our diversity really is our strength in this space, but we don't really always know it, right? So we have these conversations about being as like this incredibly diverse community and the problems that it creates for us, right? That we have, it's a challenge for us to close the gaps. But we never really get a chance to talk about, wait a minute, what about the opportunity that we have to open up the global economy that should exist in a city and a community as diverse as us? Our languages, our multilingualism is a perfect example of that. Our children in our St. Paul Public Schools speak over 120 different languages at home, and we always talk about how hard it is to teach them English. Meanwhile, I was talking to the CEO of US Bank last month, and he was telling me that they have their European headquarters in Warsaw, Poland, and the reason they have those 700 jobs in Warsaw, Poland is because their average employee speaks 6 different languages. We ought to be saying the fact that we can have a space in here that looks like this talking about tech is our biggest competitive advantage. And so, when I ran for mayor, and you run for mayor because you think you know a little bit about a city, and then in the process of running, you learn a whole lot more, and then in the process of being mayor, you learn a whole lot more. Scott Burns is one of our entrepreneurs, one of our tech leaders in this space, and as a part of being elected, as part of running, we started just making rounds. And Scott started introducing me some of the innovators that he knows in the cities, and the honest truth is, I was blown away, and I brag on it, but I was still blown away by just how much innovation happens right here in St. Paul, by just how much is going on. As good Minnesotans, when we're really excited about something, we make sure never to talk about it. Especially if we're proud of something. We've mastered the concept of silent pride in Minnesota, and we're trying to break that rule. And so, as Councilmember Tolbert was talking about, changing that perception is really critical, because perception and reality create each other at the same time. And so making sure that we tell the story, making sure that we showcase this room, making sure that we showcase the amazing businesses that are being launched right here, making sure that we welcome you and say, this is gonna be the amazing place to launch your business, because we want you here, because we want you here, because we want you here. That's something that's really exciting for me, and that's why I'm excited to be here tonight.
It felt right at the moment.
I felt like we should be done.
Ended with that.
And with that, I would like to ask for each of you to just talk about the importance. Recently you went viral with the brown-eyed mayor. And I would like for each of you to just talk about the importance, one, for you, Mayor Carter, of having a brown-eyed mayor at this time here in St. Paul, and just what's happening at a national level, why it's important for us to have a brown-eyed mayor, as well as the importance of us having brown-eyed tech stars here in the Twin Cities. A lot of times people, think about Minnesota, you think about we're not represented here in numbers, let's just say that.
White
and we have 3 tech stars from the Twin Cities, and so I just want you guys to kind of talk about why is it important for us to have this representation here in the Twin Cities where the numbers are working against us.
Well, I can start. So I'm gonna pull a Clarence here. By a show of hands, how many people here are working on a startup or a part of a startup, some type of entrepreneur endeavor? So that's why. So that is why. Because there are people here that are trying to do it. And so whether they're here or they're somewhere else, they're here. And so I'm here. Clarence is here. Mayor's here. And so it's great to have representation at the top, so you have something you can not only aspire to be, but also have people can ask questions. Me, Clarence, Mayor out here talking to you guys, sharing our experiences, and being able to essentially learn from each other because we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, I think it's important because we need to change the narrative around young black boys, right? The narrative today is that you have to shoot a jump shot or you have to rap in order to make it, when there's so many other avenues, and that's what's been impressive about obviously having a black mayor in St. Paul, right? Because a guy like me, I get to look at a guy like that and say, wow, like, you really can do whatever you want to do in this life. So I think like the more like opportunities we have to show young black men and black boys that there's something different out here, you can succeed. That's really important to me.
We have some of the worst disparities in the nation right here in St. Paul, right? Minnesota we're an education state, we're a home ownership state, we're a low unemployment state, we're a wealthy and healthy state. And I remember about 10 years ago when I first ran for city council, telling a group of folks, I love Minnesota so much, I want it in my neighborhood. So we know that we have some of the worst disparities in the nation, and you may have heard this. I'm the first person of color to serve as mayor in St. Paul. Have you heard that? But what amazes me is we talk about those two things as though they're coincidental to one another. When in fact, our disparities are the obvious and inevitable product of exclusive processes. And so what I bring into the mayor's office at a time where we're talking about whether our diversity is a liability or an asset, at a time where we're talking about how to ensure that we make the most out of our conversations between our neighbors and our police officers, at a time where we're talking about what it's going to take for our schools to serve all of our children, I think I bring an experience that we've just never had, a perspective that we've never had. But our goal is, for me just being by myself in the mayor's office doesn't change that much, really. Our goal is to say, if exclusive processes are what has created our disparities, and we want to eliminate our disparities, well then we have to do the opposite. We have to make inclusive processes. And so it can't just be about me having a different perspective in the office. It's got to be about me taking you guys and making sure that the people who really represent who our city is, which is completely and fundamentally different than who represented who St. Paul was even when I was growing up here, that we all really have a chance to be kind of the shareholders, to be the stakeholders, and to kind of drive the work of building the vision for our city forward, whether that's our economy, our housing, our education system, and all of those types of things. So I think the most powerful thing about me being mayor is the ability that we have working together to kick the doors open to make sure we all get our say in City Hall.
Diversity in tech, we all know the numbers. It is something that is talked about. Everybody wants to, really try to solve the problem or the issue in diversity in tech and making the space inclusive. I want to, talk to each of you, ask you, what do you believe are some critical key things that we need to do in order to build an inclusive tech economy? And why it is important for us to have an inclusive tech economy. When we talk about full stack, driving business, the one thing, and Scott can bear testament to this, that I kept saying, it has to be inclusive, we have to be inclusive, we have to, think about diversity, and I think it's very important to me. So wanting to talk to you, ask you, each of you, how do we make that happen?
I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. I just had a long conversation with Clarence yesterday about investing in underrepresented minority startups and businesses. And to me, I think that's what it's going to take. I think that's what's really important. And not just like financially, because that's one component that's also really important, trying to raise money and things like that. But even like sweat equity wise, or being able to reach out and give a helping hand and be willing to, ask questions of people and willing to offer your resources to someone that you don't normally offer resources to. I think that's how you kind of break down the barriers and kind of bring people together around a primary objective of diversity in the Techquity space.
I agree. I think, for me personally, there's been so many people breathing life into me, into UPSI. And those are people that, if you would ask me 10 years ago, would I be talking to Scott Burns at 11:30 at night as my therapist?
Is it working, Scott?
Or Brett Bro, or just some of the some of the dope people that I've gotten the opportunity to meet throughout this journey. So I think one is about getting people to breathe life into people that don't look like them, and be comfortable with that. And then everything comes down to dollars, right? Less than 3% of venture fund go to, I think it's women, and less than 1% goes to African Americans. That's a huge problem. You can't expect us to push a business forward, with $1 the same way you expect somebody else to push a business forward with $10 million. So until we change that narrative on both sides, I think we're going to continue to stay kind of stuck in the mud where we're at today.
I mostly just try to listen to Sharon.
Me too.
Right. No, I would underscore everything that you guys said, and part of the acknowledgement I think we have to make is, and this is part of what I was just saying before about kicking the doors open, is we don't know, right? As a city, as a government entity, we don't know. That's why we need you in this space, so that we can have that conversation with you guys, so that we can have that conversation with all of you when you raise your hand, when you're asked, who's working on building a startup. I think we have to have that conversation together. I know we have to open the doors. I heard what you said about kind of equity and building the spaces and building the opportunities. I think we can create a real kind of economy of scale here as people see that this is part of the St. Paul narrative, and that we get really kind of excited around it together. I think we can create an opportunity for our entrepreneurs and our innovators in this space to be seen by people who want to invest in great ideas. I'm super excited that we landed Techstars here in St. Paul. We're really, really excited about that. That's an opportunity of a lifetime for us. And I think part of it is, where we start. And so I'm really glad that you guys are here and where you are right now. Part of my hope is that you all being in this space connects with our young people in our libraries right now, our young people in our schools, our young people in our recreation centers right now, so that our 3rd and 4th graders, so that our youngest children can just start seeing themselves as innovators and start seeing, we have children in our community who don't see a tech innovator in their day-to-day life necessarily, and we need them to have the opportunity to see you so they can see themselves in your shoes.
I'm going to tell a quick story in regards to Techstars, to kind of build on that. Last year we had Techquity during Startup Week in our twin sister city. And we had Ryan Rochar, who's also a member of the Full Stack, and Natty Zan from Colorado. And so we had Clarence facilitated a conversation, and once again we had a pitch competition where African American or individuals of color who are leading startups had a chance to pitch. And at that, I think James as well as Tyree, they both pitched at Techquity, at a Blacks in Tech meetup, and they were there. And from there, they were able to reach out to Ryan and Natty, and they were able to be a part of this 2018 Techstars class, and one in LA and also in Colorado. So creating spaces and places for individuals of color to be visible. I think that is really important for us and for individuals like the Skies and like the Bretts to lend their time and their voice and their expertise to individuals of color is really, really important. And so, just wanted to add that.
And I would add, I think it's so much more important than just even being in the opportunity. It's about being in the opportunity and being able to be authentic and be who you are.
Right.
I know I battled this for a long time, and I finally came out. I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna be who I am. Whatever, right? But it's really hard for Black and brown founders to walk into a space that you're not comfortable in and be yourself. So I think what events like this and that event did was allow people to walk in and just be themselves. And that was attractive to Ryan and to Natty, and that allowed them to help these guys move on to the next level.
Yeah, I was listening on the second on that. It's just, and that's exactly it. It's like being able to share your own resources. You may not be able to write a check, but you may be able to give somebody an introduction. You may be able to help somebody put something together. You may be able to share some of your skill sets with the underrepresented minority founder, and sometimes that's all it takes.
Really, here's a question I want each of you to take. How do you cut through the noise and the bias and the preconceived ideas individuals may have about you as a man of color? How do you cut through that noise?
Again, I just don't. I think that I've found who I am, like inside of all that noise, right? And what happens is, I think you're going through this game of where you're trying to raise money, and you're trying to impress people, and you figure out everybody else is fucking same. Like, everybody's literally saying the same things. And what it started to intrigue investors was like, hey, here's a dude that knows what he knows, but he's confident enough to be who he is. And like, I think throughout this whole thing, like, that's what I tell founders all the time, be who you are. And if somebody doesn't like that, that's okay. Like, the same way there's millions of entrepreneurs out here, there are millions of investors with money who literally, there's so much money in this room right now. Seriously.
Everybody looks
so much
around.
money. Like, everybody's looking at each other like, you got money? But seriously, like being who you are, it's probably been the biggest compliment that I got from any investor was like, Clarence, like when you walked in here, you were yourself. You didn't try to be somebody else, and that's what made me want to invest in you.
You hit it right on the head. I'll add a little bit to it. The way I cut through the noise is be myself, bring results. You know, it's like I am who I am, and make sure that I'm executing on my business. And so they can't argue with the results. And so it's like, those are the conversations I have. Here's what I'm doing, here's the results we have. Are you in or you're out? And be myself the whole way.
So I don't run a tech company, so I just ran for mayor today. But it's a similar challenge. I had a similar, not with the expletive, I don't use curse words. Upstanding member of our community. Hey, he called me, it was 5 o'clock in the morning at the airport, and he deserves it.
I'm working on it. Jesus is working.
I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I used to be.
And all the black people say
So about a year ago, we came to the point while I was running for mayor, and I think it's similar, where I realized, I think we could create a message and create a personality and define a characteristic of me that could land with more votes on election day than the rest of the competition. But we feel that a really interesting question, which was slightly different. The different question was, but can I win, right? If in this moment I tell you honestly about the relationship that I've had, the interactions that I've had with police officers in my lifetime, right here in St. Paul, if I tell you about my own anxiety sending my young children in our public schools, right? If I tell you about the way I really bring my authentic, like full self to this moment, then you know, how would people in St. Paul? How would people in St. Paul respond to that? And ultimately, over those next few months, we did something that essentially felt like I was like stepping out on a limb. And with each step, the incredible thing was I would find the limb to be thick. And I would step out a little bit further, and I would find the limb to be thick. And there's lots of analogies, I think, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of getting the equity and getting the funding and those types of things. But where politics is concerned, like one of the ahas that I've had is we're constantly trying to, you know, everybody who runs for office tries to, I'm supporting a candidate for governor, and we're having a conversation, and somebody was saying that this candidate for governor doesn't seem like they can win statewide. And the rationale they gave me was because if you look at all the people who ever won elections statewide, this person doesn't remind me of those people. And I was like, well, but did you see what you just did there? Right? Like, you just narrowed it way down, you know, to white, older men, right? And they said, well, that's not what I meant. I was like, I know you did. No.
I know you didn't mean it.
But the crazy thing is, we talk about like we're trying to fit that mold, but the one thing, like if you polled Americans, the one thing you'd find a super majority on is who here is sick of politics as usual, right? All of us. And so what was amazing to me, and I think tech is the same place, what we need in our tech innovators is something new and different. So when you bring your own like creative, authentic self to this space, I think that people will actually respond to that in the same way that people responded when I dared to do that in the context of our politics.
So we just gonna stop every time we hear something. I feel like I just say some really inspirational stuff. And every time he say something, everybody clap. And it's always starting in the back of the room. I'm just saying, like, be fair with the Equity.
Okay, really quickly, in talking to entrepreneurs or individuals, in the tech space, three things stood out as some of the things that were key to their success and doing well, and relationships, risk, and knowledge. So, wanting you guys to talk a little bit about, relationships, the importance of risk and how you manage that, as well as acquiring that business acumen you need to push you forward.
So relationships, I think, is the key to anything in life. I think when I look at some of the relationships that I've been able to form over the last 2, 3, 4 years, those relationships at one time or another had an opportunity to make me or break me, right? So like anybody I come across, I'm looking at them as an opportunity to build a relationship, because I just never know who somebody's gonna ask them, hey, what do you think of Clarence? Oh, he's a jerk. Well, now I miss up on an opportunity, right? So I think relationships is really important. Entrepreneurship is all about taking risks. I can tell you, like my wife is here. I can tell you times where we're eating like ramen noodles and like we couldn't afford to do anything, right? And so like you take those risks and you find that partner that you can take risks with. Like that's really important. And if you do those things, like if you build great relationships and you take the right calculated risks, you'll start to gain the knowledge. And I think that's also like with being vulnerable. Like you only gain knowledge when you're willing to tell somebody I don't know.
Right.
And what happens is, I think as an entrepreneur, and especially as a black man, we're taught to like stand up and be strong and act like we know everything. And the minute I flip that narrative to being vulnerable and just saying, hey, I don't know, like, I don't know what CAC versus LTV is. Like, can somebody help me figure this out? It's amazing what people will like jump to the task and do when you just say, I don't know. So I think that's another way you gain knowledge. I deserve that.
Equitable We're about equity in the city of St. Paul.
I sure love that. The way I think about it is, I'm gonna kind of flip it on its tail a little bit. So, to me, risk starts where knowledge stops. So where you stop knowing what you're doing is where risk begins. And so, like, as an entrepreneur, you have to take risks. You have to kind of take a leap of faith where you don't know everything that's going to happen in the future, but you have a dream, you have a vision, and so you go after it. And so, as a founder of a company, you're a CEO, your key role is to reduce risk in the company. You're supposed to mitigate risk as much as you can on all aspects. And so that means you have to increase your knowledge. And so the question is, like, how do you increase your knowledge? So we can Google stuff, that's one way. But then the other way is building relationships, meeting people, learning from others and trusting people, like building a team, trusting other people to kind of hold that knowledge as well. And so that's how it kind of all works for me. And so the only way we can mitigate risk in our company is by building relationships with others and essentially like connecting with others and sharing with others. I've been saying sharing a lot, but that's my word of the day. Share, share, share. Share bears, share care bears, whatever it is.
You're not gonna get any clap.
No, I'm teaching my children how to ice skate. Some of you guys might know I skate crashed ice. I skated crashed ice this year. I do it every year, and I love it because it's a lot of fun. I also love it because it just confuses the heck out of people. They're like, "Where'd you learn how to ice skate?" I grew up in St. Paul. Why wouldn't I know how to ice skate? But I'm teaching my children how to ice skate, and the simple lesson that I'm teaching them is the only thing that I'll teach them about ice skating is like two things. I always tell them the only two things you need to know is how to fall and how to get back up. If you do that over and over and over again, you'll find yourself able to skate. The problem is one of my kids like just always hanging onto the rail, and my message to him is like, if you never fall, then you'll never skate. Right? If your goal is to never fall, then your goal is to never skate. So a lot of times, and public sector is this way, private sector is this way in some ways, when our goal is to avoid risk, right? Somebody asked me after I skated crash ice, they were like, "Did you fall?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh." And I was like, "No, if you skate something like that and never fall, it means you didn't max out your fun factor, right?" Of course I fell, right? That was the goal, right? Because that's how you learn, that's how you fail forward, that's how you kind of proceed. One of the things that I would wonder is, as people of color innovators, do you get the same opportunity to fail forward and to learn through failure and to continue to be able to kind of push forward? And that's, I think, something that it's not just the seed funding, the initial kind of round of funding, but Apple, Microsoft, like their story ain't linear, and neither are the stories of any of these kind of organizations and the businesses in the room. So I think knowing how to take risks is absolutely critical. Obviously, you don't get in the door, especially as us in this room, unless you have a level of knowledge base to kind of get there. I try to network with people all the time, and I tell my mentees and people who I work with, all I can do is open the door. You got to figure out how to kind of get through that space for yourself, right? But then the final thing, I believe that exactly what you guys said, the thing that gives it all wings is really those relationships. And that's how you figure out how to kind of get what I think of as kind of a multiplier effect kind of to your work. I always tell people that like 80% of everything I know is really, really good people, right? And as a leader, I do my best thinking in their minds, right? And that's what, to me, like that through the relationship building and the ability to, like you said, to say, I don't really know, it's funny because 10 years ago I ran for city council, and when I first got on the city council, we'd had these meetings, and I had this aide who knew everything, and we'd be in a meeting, and she'd like whisper to me whatever the acronym meant or whatever it said.
Miss Akuli Ellis.
Miss Akuli Ellis, absolutely. And I'd be like, I know. Like, wait, what was it again? And now I've been around the city like 10 years, and if somebody walks, if I don't know, I just don't know. It ain't cause like, you know what I mean? And to me, like the biggest thing that I learn every single day is how little I know, is how much more I have to learn. And that's a beautiful space to be in. So I agree with you all that it's the nexus of all of it.
There's a couple more questions because we have another amazing panel coming up. As a Black woman, amazing opportunity to lead this conversation. However, I have to point out that our goal for our next event is to ensure that there is a Black woman or a woman of color who is part of Techstars or on this panel with us. I thank the mayor for taking the chance on me as his CIO for the city of St. Paul. And so you are putting in the work to do that, which leads to my next question. My next question is, what can you three commit to ensuring that we'll have some women on this panel at our next Techquity event that takes place here?
First of all, there's only one thing I can commit to, right? And that's I'm gonna wake up tomorrow Black. I can't commit that there's gonna be. I'm serious. Yeah,
pay taxes.
Yeah, pay taxes. Yeah, barely. Yeah. Sorry, man. No, you know what? I can name a few. Jasmine Russell. Like there are like some dope, unbelievable Black women in our community who are doing like unbelievable things that they're just not out in front. as much. So my commitment is to force them next time to be up here instead of us.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you bring up some of the things that are happening with black women in the startup space. I'm not sure if you guys know, Arlen from Backstage Capital just launched a $36 million fund focused just on black women. I think it's awesome. So I'm gonna tell as many people, I commit to tell as many people about that as possible. And then I commit to also being a resource, right? So my email is james@spark.dj. So if anybody wants to hear my 2 cents on anything, or if I'm able to help them any type of way, feel free to reach out. So I'm willing to help any way I can there. So.
And I'm committed to making St. Paul the place that you want to launch your business, right? The place for this to be a successful kind of launching place. So all of you guys who raise your hand, please do reach out to us. I know Mark was in the back of the room. I don't know where he went now, but he's.
Dr. Corey is here,
Yep,
who
Dr.
is
Corey.
the Director of Planning and Economic Development.
Yep. So if you looking to launch a tech business in St. Paul, these are the two people between these two and Mark. Like, please connect with us directly because we want you to be here. We want this to be the space for you. We want to connect with you. We got co-working spaces downtown. We got a new one opening up right now. We got co-working spaces all over. We got good space to be able to work. We want to work with you to kind of figure out how to make this a space where you can really succeed and you can really launch your business. Because that's how we succeed, is by you succeeding. So we want to create the space, we want to create the places, we want to create the opportunities, and see all of y'all do your thing.
Well, that was my last question. My last question was for Mayor Carter to basically tell James and Clarence why St. Paul was the best place. So I think you've done that. So.
Oh, I haven't said why St. Paul's the best place yet.
Best place for them to locate people.
Look, I told Clarence that at 5 o'clock in the morning at the airport. And once I woke up and got the sleep out of my eyes, I was like, so anyways, where are you planting your business? And so we're working on that. But you know what, I mean, here's the thing. St. Paul, I believe in with all my heart, is the place, is the most incredible place on the planet. When we think about, to me, I would tell folks 100 times a day, the only thing that really matters is when our children and grandchildren get to the age where they're trying to decide where to plant their businesses and where to plant their families, what will they be looking for? They'll be looking for good schools. We got them. They'll be looking for a river, some lakes, and some trails and parks. We got them. They'll be looking for like this diverse, multilingual, global kind of community, thriving community. We got it, right? They're gonna be looking for some light rail and bike lanes. We're building them, right? They're gonna be looking for a thriving and diverse arts and culture scene. We got it. They're gonna want food from all over the globe. We got it. Like, they're gonna want like all of these things. They're gonna want to be able to raise their kids knowing that like the world is bigger than the end of the block, the end of my nose. That's us. And so in so many different ways, St. Paul, I believe, the reason I believe in this city is because I wholeheartedly believe that, I defy you to tell me that we don't have every competitive advantage to be the type of place that's just totally positioned for the future. And like, we have the potential, but the thing is, you plugging in and being a part of this, like, is the key, is what's gonna make the difference for making sure that this is a great place for Upseed to grow and thrive, is you plugging into it, right? And so we got like an opportunity. We have nothing but potential. We have an incredible amount of human capital. We got colleges like every fourth block sometimes. And this is just a space where we're gonna prove over and over and over again for the next generation that this is just a place where success can happen.
Wow. Cosign. I was just caught up in what you were saying. So, thank you, Mayor Carter, for being here. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you, James, for being here, and thank you, Clarence, for being you and being here and being in this space. And so we also want to thank all of you for being here. This has been an amazing conversation, and we want you to stick around. We're going to switch the stage. In 5 minutes, we're going to start our next panel discussion. We talked about inclusion in the tech economy, and we talked about investment needed for that to happen. So we're going to have a panel centered around investments. And so we'll have some of our VCs here to talk about why it's important for them to make investments in entrepreneurs of color and create an inclusive tech economy.
Yes, no, and both Sharon and Bruce have business cards on them, so seriously, if you're launching your business, we want to at least have a conversation about how it makes sense to launch that business in St. Paul. So please don't leave without connecting with one of them too, or me, or Mark, or somebody here from the city. Thank you.
We're gonna kick off the next panel. There's not a lot of time, and you have some great people you want to hear from. So my name is Scott Burns. First, I want to make a pitch for the great bars and restaurants of downtown St. Paul that would love to take your sales tax dollars after this event, so you can keep the conversation going. My primary job is the CEO of Structural, which we've conveniently put our logo right behind the here. We are people insight software, helping companies within their companies find and activate highly skilled talent working in companies of all sizes. Previously, I ran a company called Gov Delivery, which is a couple blocks over. We built from a basement in St. Paul to 250 people before we sold it in 2016. And that company is still thriving today under the name Granicus. Because I can't sit still between jobs, I was involved in trying to address one of the pillars that Chris Tolbert laid out of space, creating more great spaces for entrepreneurs in St. Paul. There was a paradox happening in St. Paul where great entrepreneurs were starting businesses here or looking for space and then couldn't find space to expand, grow, land. And when we found that as a community, we really rallied with the help of Ecolab and others, and a group of people, which I'm a very small part of, with the help of Ecolab. And basically, Ecolab sold this building to that group, and we created Osborne 370. That Ecolab sold the building for much less than it was worth, with a vision and a belief that if we created more of the right kinds of spaces in St. Paul, that we could not just see companies start here, but see them grow here, and that when our great companies in the East Metro wanted a place in a city to locate, that they would have a place to land in St. Paul. I'm a firm believer that in any other place in the world, you wouldn't think St. Paul and Minneapolis, by any normal international standard, are basically in the same neighborhood. And it's just really been important to the people. You hear the pride in St. Paul and the folks in this room today to create spaces for people to grow here. So this project, Osborne 370, is a privately funded project. Again, Ecolab and some investors, but what is being done here is really investing in density of innovation businesses. So it's about 70% leased in here already. And it's all innovative companies, vast majority innovative companies, up and down. Techstars is going to be in here. And then there's some really intentional things happening, and one that I am most excited about is just around the corner where it's launching is Lunar Startups, which is part of the Glenn Nelson Center, Innovation Center from American Public Media. And I think one thing many of us who have tried to work towards inclusivity in the tech community and in St. Paul have learned that doing things by accident, it doesn't always work. And trying to hope the right thing happens isn't really a very good strategy. And so what I like a lot about Lunar Startups is that it is a place where people who have an idea, and many of you in this room would have been great candidates, but you missed the application deadline. Some of you did apply, but Lunar, which is funded generously by the Knight Foundation, housed by APM, is taking in applications for people, and for a very small fee, they get space and support and other things. You might not be ready for Techstars, but if they could have helped, Clarence out a couple years ago, it would have potentially accelerated his journey, and we want more companies doing that. And what I appreciate about it is it's very intentional. I think 40% of the applicants or 60% were applicants of diverse backgrounds. 40, 50.
They're having some rounding differences, but good. We're doing pretty darn well. Disproportionate, certainly, to the demographics in our community, and that's exactly what it should be. It's been disproportionate the other direction for long enough. So that's about it for me. We have limited time. I want to hand off to Clarence, and he can introduce the panel, and good luck to all of you. We have to divide time equally around this group.
Thanks, Scott. So super honored to be able to moderate this panel tonight. We talked on the last panel about investors, and I feel like I'm fortunate. So 3 of these guys are actually investors in UPSI, so I feel super fortunate. But where we're going to start off, and we're going to have a real discussion tonight about diversity in VC land and why it's so messed up and all that stuff. So it should be really interesting, right? But I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, talk about who you're with. Obviously, Brett got on the UPSI shirt, so you get to go first.
How many people here have ever been in the checkout line? I try and pitch UPSI as often as I can. I'm Brett Brohl. I'm the managing director of Techstars Farm to Fork. For a long time, I was an entrepreneur. I'm not actually from Minnesota. I moved here in 2009 from Florida. I've been here 9 years. Love it. I also run an early stage venture capital fund called the Seed. We've made about 17 investments in the last 2 years through the funds and 20 through Techstars.
I'm Dave Russick with Gopher Angels. We have invested in UPSI as a group. We're a network, not a fund.
First black dude they've invested in, too.
Actually, I don't know if that's true or not.
I think it's true. It's okay, be proud, man.
Not that we're counting.
I'm counting.
I have been an entrepreneur. I had a couple of businesses that I exited, and we've been doing Gopher Angels now for about 6 years. 45 companies, about $14.5 million invested out of the group.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Mary Grove, and I'm an investment partner with Revolution's Rise of the Rest Seed Fund. Our mission is all about leveling access to the playing field for capital. We know that 75% of venture capital today is deployed in California, Boston, and New York, and our mission is to help change the equation there. So in December, we just launched a $150 million seed fund to invest in rising cities across America. We have 75 companies in our portfolio. We invest at the early stage, the seed stage, sort of emerging capital. On a personal note, I am new to the area. I moved here about a month ago from Silicon Valley with my husband, Steve, who's here as well. He's the director of the Google News Lab and our 1-year-old twins. And just last week, I'm proud to say that we closed our 4th investment in the Twin Cities and our first in St. Paul in Scott's company, Structural. Really quick side note, I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit together with my husband called Silicon North Stars, and our mission is to inspire young Minnesotans from economically underserved communities towards futures in tech. So we run a summer tech camp every year in Silicon Valley for rising 9th graders, and then we do year-round programming for the next 4 years until they start college.
Good afternoon. My name is Anton Vincent. I think the best way to describe me is a recovering corporate executive. I spent 23 years at General Mills running a lot of big divisions, so I'm used to running big things with a lot of zeros behind them. But during that time, I had a lot of M&A activity experience as well. I was on the acquisition team to purchase Pillsbury Company. I was also on the board of 301 Inc. Some of you are familiar with that, where we invest in early stage, primarily food and consumer facing companies as well. So about 1.5 years ago, I started a company called Moxie Capital. We focus in 3 verticals. One, primarily consumer, mostly food. Second, high tech, and I would say third is sort of light industrials. And primarily what we do is try to focus in on kind of late seed stage. And because most of my investors and partners have a deep operational expertise, we try to sort of make sure that the capital is commodity, and then we try to combine that with operational excellence to help people scale. So we're very focused in terms of what we look at. Our average investment could go from 50 grand to 100 grand, and we would probably syndicate something up to about $500,000. So we're very focused, have a really good understanding of what we're looking at. One of the things that frustrates me, having been in the Twin Cities for so long, back to what she said, is that people see the Twin Cities as a flyover market. Which is mildly insulting if you're from here. And so there are great things going on in the Twin Cities. What I see versus other innovative cities is that we don't naturally talk and connect and help one another. It's not because we're hating on one another or competing, it's not something natural here. So I think a variety of us are trying to make sure that we get that connection going, making sure that we are integrated in terms of what's happening, trying to bring capital and expertise and a connective tissue to make sure we can accelerate what happens here in the Twin Cities. So I'm very happy to be here, very happy to have some small investments here in the Twin Cities, but want to do more. Thank you.
I'm Jim D'Aquila with a company called Rendersi LLC. We're both advisors and investors in predominantly Series B and beyond. We typically look for companies that have proven some commercial success, the ability to monetize their product or their technology. We look at technology a little differently. We look at technology not as an industry into itself, but a way of thinking and a way of, frankly, improving what's already out there. So when we met the Plank brothers back in 1994, with a little company called Under Armour, they had a technology that would take moisture away from the skin. So you think of it as an apparel company, but what made a difference for them was technology. And so we look for technology in industries that aren't necessarily tech, and sometimes they are. I've been very involved as an investor and board advisor to Polaroid the last 4 years, and we've invented several new technologies built around photography. So again, improving something that's already out there. Most everything we touch has something to do with the consumer industry, and that's just what we know and what we do. We are very, very flexible with respect to the types of companies that we work with and the investments we make, whether it be $100,000 or we just led around for $16 million in a company called The Not Standard that's we believe revolutionizing the custom menswear business. It's a technology play. It's not a men's suiting play. And so, again, technology for us is not necessarily an industry unto itself.
Lisa Golson Armstrong, Black, Canadian, and from Minneapolis. Thanks, I'm glad to round out the panel here today. 10 years as IT. I did the dot-com boom and bust. And recovered from that and pivoted into marketing and strategy. Did that for 10 years, 2 companies in town. My 3rd chapter now is an angel investor. And honestly, I'm not going to insult anybody here, but I went around and looked at a lot of angel groups. And when I walked into the room, I was the only person who looked like me. And so I found a group called Pipeline out of New York. They're national, 200 plus angels. And we're trying to change the face of angel investing. So we invest primarily in women then-led companies. And I'm doing that. I'm the 1st chapter here in Minneapolis. We have 3 partners. And this is our 1st year, and we just had our 1st pitch summit. So I'm the newbie on the crew here, but I'm hopefully changing the face of angel investing going forward.
So, Black woman, Canadian.
From Minneapolis.
From Minneapolis. That could be a TV series. So I want to start with you. Before all of this started tonight, we both said a word that I think is really important to start off with, and we talked about bias. So can you talk about maybe some of the biases that you've seen as being, Black woman, Canadian from Minneapolis, and how that's led into, like, obviously you being an angel investor?
Yes. We don't have time for all the biases, but one of the things we're trying to do is have people come into the room and look across at angel investors and see people who can understand and relate to their story. I'm sure we'll talk about fit and stuff like that later, but you come in and you're selling a product that's like, baby milk, or you're selling something about ovaries. And the people around you look and go, like, we don't have a clue what you're talking about. It's really hard to kind of get past that pitch. And so one of the things we're trying to do is have people in the room who can get past that, this is something I can't relate to or get my mind around, is something I can understand. So that's one thing. Then there's the biases, and I was telling Clarence that I actually, despite the fact that I'm all these different intersections, I have my own biases. And my biases is around education. And so I looked at a lot of people when they had their numbers and it was really rough. I'm like, well, how can they be more refined? So it really is around every single person being conscious about what they bring into the room and how they're judging the person in front of them, not by who they are or what they're bringing to the table, but maybe by some of the preconceived notions. So.
Oh, and Jim, I'm gonna switch to a question for you, because the first time I sat down with you, like, I remember walking away being like, man, this is a cool white boy. Like, he's dope. Right? You made it, right? No, but I remember how my meeting was with you versus some of the other meetings that I was having. And you were very open, you were very honest. You was less judgmental and more excited about where we could go versus where we were at that point. So going back to bias, like what keeps you from, obviously we joke around like you're a white Jewish dude, right, with a pinky ring, right, mafia. What keeps you, we're gonna laugh tonight, maybe. Where does that come from?
Well, actually,
a lot to
this
take
is what's really interesting. I grew up Catholic. I married a Jewish woman, and I have a Muslim partner. So I start out with my life with like being colorblind, religion blind, race blind. That's just the way I was raised, which is pretty unusual for a Catholic kid from Hibbing, Minnesota. But it's the way my parents were. I think if we want justice in this world and we want equality in this world, it's through capitalism. Yes, we need lots of other reforms, and I really believe capital can make a difference. And I believe if you give capital to people who don't qualify for it under the normal standards, it's a very empowering thing. So it brings me return well beyond the return of capital. It brings me, the feeling that I'm really helping society. I'll give you, I worked for a man named Michael Milken, who was the junk bond king. And the reason Michael made as much of a path, and yes, he did a few things wrong and paid for it, but now he's giving back to society heavily. He gave capital to people that Wall Street turned a back to. Ted Turner could not get financing. Craig McCaw, the founder of what we now call AT&T Cellular, could not get financing because they weren't Ivy League white boys. And so Goldman and nobody would pay attention. So I learned that 36 years ago, I watched Mike invite people into his office and treat them with humility and have an open ear and a blind eye. And so I've just taken that on. And I've taken that on as a mantra, and it's why, frankly, I left another big firm to create this firm that we just started 9 months ago. And we don't lead with it. I don't say we invest in minority businesses, we invest in women-led businesses. You can't lead with that. You got to prove it by example. But we want to do that. We really want to do that because there's a problem in this room as it relates to the way Wall Street is structured, as the way it relates to the way commercial banks are structured. The only way I can break through that is I can't wave a wand. I can just make little incremental differences, deal by deal.
And so Anton, when a diverse founder approaches you, so where's your bias at in that? Are you thinking, Lisa, you talked about your biases around like having your numbers together, right? Because you're an MBA, really smart person, right? Where's your bias to that?
Yeah, I, honestly, Clarence, I like to think that I don't have a bias, but I have.
Okay, that's wrong. That's wrong answer.
Let me finish my thought, Clarence. I said I like to think that I don't have a bias, because we all do. But I will say that I'm just gonna be very real with you. When you're approaching investors, you gotta have your shit together. I don't care what kind of idea you got. I don't care if it's the best thing since sliced bread. If you can't articulate it, you can't be passionate about it, you can't answer one or two questions that aren't obvious questions, I'm going to have a problem with it. So if my bias is anything, it's making sure you're prepared, making sure you're on time, making sure you have a really good understanding around what your product or service can or can't do, make sure you have an understanding around the market, the veracity of the market, and why you're special. Why can you do this thing that you're claiming to do? And so if there's any bias, I would say potentially I have a higher bias when I see investors of color, making sure that they're really clear on that. Because hey, one of the things I'm really good at is asking questions and getting to the nitty-gritty. I'm going to figure out whether you got something or not. I have no issues around that. But I will tell you, first impressions are still very, very important. And whether we think the thing is great or not great at some point, especially first meeting, is somewhat irrelevant. But I got to have confidence that whatever you're talking to me about, that I'm at least starting down the path that you can pull it off. Right, we'll get into due diligence at some point, but it's just making sure that you're tight, that you're on point, and that you're doing the basic things to get to the next step. Because I do think that we actually filter out a lot of folks because for some reason, they didn't do the basic things in the first meeting, which may have nothing to do with whether they have a scalable idea or not. So I think my bias is probably holding a higher bar, honestly, for investors of color, to be honest with you.
So, Mary, welcome to the Twin Cities.
Thank you so much.
And we're so excited to have you here.
Are you going to describe me in 3 words?
No. I want you to invest in Upsy one day. Why would I do that? Yeah, great work. Unbelievable. Where's the husband at? What should I say?
Amazing, beautiful.
Bam, there we go. Bam. I need $1 million check. So obviously you're coming from Silicon Valley, right? And you've seen, you were at Google, you've seen a lot of great things. How is the Twin Cities different than Silicon Valley in both a good way and a negative way?
Sure. Well, we moved here about 6 weeks ago, so I would say, we're still very much getting to know the ecosystem, and we welcome any and all opportunities to get to know all of you and get advice and feedback on what we should be looking at. But I would say the reason we moved here is we are deeply passionate about the opportunities here, right? Revolution, the firm that I work at, is based in DC, not Minneapolis. It was my request and my choice to ask to be based here. And I see, we have family here, we think it's an amazing community, but from a business perspective, I think this is an incredible place to start and scale a company. It's really the diversity of the local economy is unbelievable. The companies we work with here, they don't have to go to the regional hub or go to the coast to get a meeting, to look for customers, to get mentors, right? That the most Fortune 500 companies per capita in the country all in one place, but also a very scrappy, innovative team of entrepreneurs across, every aspect of the community. So I think there's a lot going on. There's a really welcoming, incredible community vibe, from what I've learned. There's economic diversity here, and there's also this notion of pay it forward, which is something that I experienced in Silicon Valley that was really special. Was everyone you meet here is willing to pause and go the extra mile of how can I help you, is something I've heard a lot. And I can't tell you how warmly we've been received here and how enthusiastic and how special that is. In terms of Silicon Valley, there's a lot to love, but there's also a lot to learn from. Right? I think some of the best things about Silicon Valley, if I had to characterize one thing, it would be this complete lack of fear of failure. Right? The idea that you can launch and iterate quickly, that you're constantly asking for feedback. One pitfall I see a lot of entrepreneurs face is just keeping it too close to the vest for too long, when someone could have told you harshly in the first quarter or the first year, somebody's doing it better, that's not a competitive advantage, let's pivot the idea. And so I think that complete lack of fear of failure, the discussion with everyone I meet, can you help me? So I also think something that I've been obsessively thinking about recently is how do we learn from the density of Silicon Valley is incredibly valuable, but with that has come a lot of negative side effects that we're seeing, right? The affordable housing crisis, homelessness, the education system, infrastructure, traffic. As we think about building dense clusters elsewhere, like here in the Twin Cities, one thing that I've been in awe of is this is such a livable city. So much access to nature, amazing education system, great parks, relatively affordable on a relative basis. And how do we think about adding all those layers of density so we get the economic development without getting some of the negative pitfalls that we're seeing out on the coast?
Great. So, David, so Gopher Angels. So, how long have you guys been around again?
6 years.
6 years. So, what is the transition you've seen from 6 years ago when you and your wife started this to now? I think there's been a major shift in the Twin Cities over the last 5 years of tech talent, tech companies. More people are doing it. What are some of the transitions that you've seen happen over the last 5 years since you started this?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's really been incredible. When we started Gopher Angels, we were still sort of working our way out of that Great Recession. Money was really hard to find. And as entrepreneurs, we went through that ourselves, actually. But what I've seen over the last 6 years, and I think Brett's a good example here, the Techstars program, that would have been unheard of 6 years ago. And not only one of them, Farm to Fork, but we also have, retail Techstars, which you came out of. We also have Generator here, who started up a medical accelerator, working with Mayo, as well as a couple of the Fortune 500 companies here in town. That is incredible. And I think for the entrepreneurs out there, this is the best time ever to be doing what you're doing. Jessica, Minnesota Cup, right over there. The biggest state competition in the country is here to learn, to meet people. There are all sorts of opportunities out there for entrepreneurs now to network, really. And one of the questions you prepared us for in advance, how do you meet investors? One of the best ways to do that is to get a warm introduction. All right. One of the best ways to find a warm introduction is to be at events like this. Yesterday I was at Mini Analytics, and people that were there were meeting other people, learning about the ecosystem here. Before that, I was at the introduction of the Impact Hub down at Finnegan's. They were doing the same thing. There's a lot going on here. So compared to 6 years ago, that's a tremendous environment right now.
So let's talk about a diverse founder that's not in the network, that doesn't have, doesn't understand that, right? What is the second way that they should approach you if it's not from a warm introduction?
Yeah, and and I was trying to, how am I going to answer that question? That's a tough one, because we get inundated with people looking for money, and if I don't know them, it's difficult to know how much time I can spend on that particular deal. But how are you going to do this? So in our particular case with Gopher Angels, we use a platform called GUST, G-U-S-T. You create a GUST profile, which you did, which is a good thing to do anyway because it helps organize your thinking about your business. And once that's created, then you share that with Gopher Angels. And once that is shared with Gopher Angels, then it gets into a queue for us to review, to potentially invite your company in to pitch before the group. We don't necessarily, and it's not because we had a warm introduction that we invite you in to pitch before the group. It's because you have a good quality company that we're looking at that has a lot of potential for a return for our investors. And I want to, the important thing is for those that are new as entrepreneurs, we're not in angel investing for philanthropy. We're in angel investing to make a return on our investment. So we're looking for companies that can be successful, that can scale, and then exit in, say, 5 to 7 years ideally, so we can make money off of you. That's the way it is.
So I'm gonna go to Brett real quick, but I want to stay along that line of thinking. How should an entrepreneur who's not in your network approach you? Then I have a second question at the end.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to do it is look at that investor's portfolio, see who they've invested in the past, find one of those entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are very open to talking to entrepreneurs and typically want to help other entrepreneurs. And so go to Clarence. I've invested in Upsy. If you don't know me, go to Clarence, talk to Clarence. Even if you do know me and you can get a warm introduction to me, go to talk to Clarence first anyways before you come talk to me. And ask Clarence, because he got money from me, right? Ask Clarence, how the hell did you get money from Brett? And he'll tell you exactly how he did it.
Look, Brett will give anybody money too. Seriously. He is literally pass out checks.
I gave you money. I gave you money. But that's a great way to get a warm intro, is to go through, look at the portfolio, look at who they've invested in, go to that entrepreneur. I actually hold open office hours for anybody that wants to sign up on Wednesdays. And so there's a lot of investors that do that. Or there's oftentimes people will set up Ask Me Anything sessions. And so, go just do your research. You can find ways to do that, but come prepared to Anton's point. Like, if you're gonna sign up for a 15-minute, and they're short, it's a 15-minute Ask Me Anything session, come prepared with what you want to talk about, right? I also always love the saying, I don't know who said it first, but ask for advice, get money, ask for money, get advice. And so if you set up for that first meeting with somebody, people don't invest in the first meeting. People invest in people that you've built a relationship with over time. And so if you come out hard in a first meeting, you're probably gonna shoot yourself in the foot.
So me asking Mary for money in front of all these people is wrong.
Is this the first time you met her?
First time I met her.
You're screwed.
Second question, this is actually for everyone. What is the biggest mistake that you're seeing diverse founders make when they approach you? So obviously they didn't come through the network. It's not a warm intro, but you were nice and you took the meeting. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen them make? Maybe just one for each one of you.
Let me start. Yeah. Something that resonated with me from the first panel was you guys were talking about being yourself and making sure that you're true to yourself when you're coming through. One thing to keep in mind about the way I think about investing is I'm not looking for average. I'm not looking for the founder that is trying to be like everybody else. I am looking for the one-offs, right? And that's what I want to find. So sure, you need to know your stuff, but if you don't have something unique about you or something that stands out about you, or if I can tell that you're not being yourself, I am not going to invest in you. We invest in people so much more than we invest in ideas. And people can change a business. An A+ team can make a B business sing. An F team can make an A idea fail. And so we want to invest in great, plus investing in a company is more permanent than marriage, right? I mean, how often do you and I talk?
My wife wouldn't agree with that.
How often? Stats say it is. So
yeah, but you don't get half if I leave.
So that's.
What about you, Dave? Like, what are some of the mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making?
Yeah, when you guys were up here at the first panel, I thought you brought up some really good points. And one of them is honesty. We're really looking, because it is like a marriage, and you want somebody with integrity. You want somebody that's honest, and you sort of touched on it, honest with yourself, who you are. That comes out. But also, when we're looking at people, we want to know that they're somewhat coachable, willing to learn. You mentioned that as well. I don't know everything. That's really important when you're starting a business, because you can't know it all. So we're looking for people that have some humility, that realize that they don't know it all, and that they're going to be coachable and willing to learn.
I'll answer in a slightly different way, which is just a perspective, as a woman and a minority. I think that it's an incredible moment in the industry, and sort of the momentum around the tech press around these issues right now is really a moment that we should capitalize on. So as people of color, as female founders, I would not hesitate to lean into that, because you should know that the pressure is on in the investment community. And it's not about, the way I think about it internally, it's not about having a quota in terms of portfolio composition. It is about the intentionality of seeing a diverse pipeline, of understanding that we need to expand the network. It's not about creating a women's network or people of color network. It's about bringing in everyone into the networks that exist, because we all know it's a relationship business. So I would just encourage you to really lean into that and know that's actually, in my mind, a very much a competitive advantage at the moment, and it's something that we should really capitalize on. So, as an investor, I don't think about, it's not about lowering the bar by any means. It's about waiting longer to make sure that we see the right number of companies, because we're not getting the warm introductions just yet.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's an excellent question, and I would say this about early stage entrepreneurs in general. It's just, I'll go back, I think it's a listening piece, but I would say it's a listening and the application. I've been in situations where I've had insane expertise in a domain that someone is trying to develop in, and as investors, we have to be careful as well, because we don't know everything, because investors are, if nothing else, we're quick learners. Right, literally what we're doing is we're trying to connect dots, and we're trying to zero in on the market, and we're trying to triangulate whether this market and this idea and this leadership team can get to the number I'm looking at, right? So what I see is folks not listening, not accepting what investors may have, not only maybe expertise, but also a conceptual understanding around the path that they're going down, and not at least pausing to at least assume that there might be something valid there. Generally you can get past that, but what that tells you is that the entrepreneur does not have a good learning agility and a good appreciation for a broad set of points of view. So that's the one thing I think that gets me quite a bit. Just the ability to listen, and to apply, and to make their communication as simple as possible. So those are things that I see, especially in the early stage.
So Jim, let me switch the question a little bit. Is there a thin line between confidence and arrogance for you? This is like Jeopardy.
Yeah. So, if confidence gets anywhere near arrogance in my book, I'm out. It's kind of a fine line, but it's not so fine that, let me give you an example of arrogance. Shortly after I invested in your deal and became public, a lot of people approached me and said, well, then you should not do my deal. Why is that? And they had drawn all these analogies, including the analogies of color, right? And I'm like, no, that's not the way it works. So if you approach me thinking it's going to be an easy sell, which is arrogance, then I'm out. This fundraising is excruciating. And we don't try and make it that way. It's that, in fact, we try and demystify it, debug it. We're very simple. We want this and this and this. And if you can't give it to us, and you don't get frustrated. But yes, I think if you come to the table with the expectation that you're going to sweep us off our feet, and then we're just going to write a check and it's going to be really easy, that's arrogance, and we're up. And I would reiterate one other thing that you said, David. Tell me what you don't know, not what you know. And that's the thing that you did so well. You spent more time on your weaknesses and trying to find capital partners to fill in those weaknesses than you did on your strengths. And to me, that is the opposite of arrogance. It's honesty, it's credibility, and it's really self-awareness. And that's the one thing, if you ask me for one thing, it's the self-awareness factor. That it's not just people of diversity, that a lot of entrepreneurs have. And everybody thinks that, oh my gosh, I'm going to put on a t-shirt and I'm going to walk in and I've got that attitude, I've got that Silicon Valley attitude. It's probably why I've never invested in any Silicon Valley companies. It's why I love the humble Midwest, right? And you know what? You're not Mark Zuckerberg. And I don't know if Mark would get away with that again right now, to be honest. So self-awareness, and I think if you're self-aware, humility comes with it.
And Lisa, so what about, I feel like you've been sitting on the end for like 30 years just
I'm
waiting
that's like a long
for a
time
question. So I'm going to ask you 8 questions in a row. So what does that start and stop with you? Because you told me before this, business school, all those things. So I instantly got like kind of funny because I was like, wow, she's 10 times smarter than me because she went to business school. Like, what does that stop and start with you?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to, and I'm not going to alienate anybody, but I am going to talk to females and say that I think for females, I don't see a lot of arrogance. In fact, I almost see the opposite, which is underplaying, right? Which is a company I was talking to, and she was giving me all these facts, and I was like, wow, and she was saying it very straight, and I'm like, I'm so excited, this is awesome, you've revenue, blah, blah, blah. And so I actually see the opposite, where I think, and I don't know if it was you who said it, that people hold things close to their vest, and I felt like she was feeling like it wasn't buttoned up enough. It wasn't good enough, it wasn't perfected enough to share it with me. And I was like, no, this is amazing. Let me introduce you to other people. So I'm going to kind of flip it on the other way and say, I think particularly for women, they feel like it has to be even better. It has to be more perfect before they can actually share it with early investors. I didn't say it earlier, but I do early stage investing. So I'm doing that, friends and family before David and Anton here will look at it, I'll look at it. So I'm playing in the role of friends and family. And so in friends and family, it's like you're pitching to your mom. You're pitching to your dad for money. So I'm not looking at the same level, I don't do the same level of investment, so I'm also looking at, I'm going to support you on your idea, I'm going to support you on your character, I'm going to support you because it makes sense. To Clarence's point, I think I'm a little smart, so if I get it, then that's great. If I don't get it, then I'm like, okay, if I can't get it, then there's an issue there. So I think for me, it's really around, for women, being a little bit more confident. Not arrogant, but a little more confident.
And what about the men? Can you talk about the men? Because
they don't pitch me, so I don't know them as well.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
No.
So men, if you got a business idea, you need some money, pitch Lisa, because she's looking.
Yeah, not really, but yes.
Equity.
I'm trying to balance it out. We have a long way to go, so we're trying to balance it out.
So another question for you. So how do you want a founder to approach you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and I think it's the obvious, and we're sitting in a space right here, but accelerators in places are really important, I think, to get warm introductions. I work out of Minneapolis, and I work out of the Coven. But what I get there is a lot of people who know what I do, and so they walk up to me and say, hey, this is Lisa, and this is what she's doing, and sit down, they have a coffee, and we just talk 15 minutes or so. And that starts that relationship, right? They're not pitching me, it's not a pitch summit. They're just saying, hey, this idea, and I'll say, hey, you know what, that sounds like early enough for something I want to talk about, sounds later. And I just help curate them or point them where the next place to go is. So I think building those relationships in informal settings where you can just have a minute and it's not just a few minutes to talk is really important. And so I know people kind of work on their own or independently at home. I'd encourage you to get out there and be in spaces where you can get introduction and people know what you're doing so they can make that connecting for you to make that warm introduction.
One of the things I look for is how resourceful are you at getting to me. So when I lived in LA, I didn't expect you to have the community help you get to me. In this town, when I moved here from Los Angeles, my brother said, are you really willing to come back? I said, why? He goes, Jimmy, this is a small town. I said, how small? He goes, you're going to meet yourself going to work someday. and I'll never forget because when my wife and I put a house into escrow, it was on a run, I do run. And it was 5 in the morning, and this woman came up and she goes, you must be that boy from California that's buying that house. I'm like, how'd you hear about it? She said, oh, my brother is a mortgage banker at First Bank. And I'm like, okay, this is a small town. But my point is, if you can't get to somebody in this community through kind of a couple of bounces, you're not going to do it, you're not going to succeed raising money on the coasts at all. So I would tell you, use this community because it's accepting and wanting to help. Now, we don't always have the time to do that, but if somebody, you got to me in a kind of a roundabout way, right? And you took advantage of it, right? And so, be resourceful. I mean, it's literally, look who you have LinkedIn connections with. Just ask people. Find out lawyers I've done business with or whatever. One of the things that I love is when somebody sends me a nice, crisp email. It's a very compelling business proposition, and I've never met them before. But obviously, they've done enough work to find my email, to get to me, and to write something that is going to capture my attention. I don't go to a lot of accelerator events. I don't have really, frankly, the time to do that. But part of it is I love when people have the persistence to get to me because it proves that you have the persistence not only to get to me, but to get to your customers, to get to the employees you want. You're in a mode right now of working the hell out of your network to find your employees. And that's incredibly important. So I would say just keep trying and you'll get through.
So let's talk about founder traits. So what I would love to hear from each one of you is one trait that you're looking for in a founder when you first meet them, that you say, God, I might cut a check to that person. Mary, start with you.
Sure. I think, incredibly big vision that's also grounded in tangible operational execution.
Yeah, I think I would say it's just learning agility, especially in the tech space, because whatever you're creating today, you're going to change it tomorrow. You just are, because people they're going to be on you, going to be after you, especially if it's any good. So I would say learning agility and understanding the potential for tipping points is a big one.
Passion. You can see it in a person's eyes when they really care about their business. And the other thing I would say that counters passion is I want to see that dose of fear. I want to see vulnerability. I want you to admit the vulnerability. I want you to admit the fact that you don't have the barriers to entry you think you have and all of that. And so the counter of passion and confidence would be, confidence, not arrogance, is vulnerability.
Yeah, I mean, we're always at Techstars, we're always talking about being intellectually honest. And in order to be intellectually honest, you have to be able to look at yourself and say, I don't know these things. And it's okay to tell a VC, I don't know these things. And I think when I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they lack that trait, which doesn't allow them to even get past that first base. So
yeah, just to pick up on that, the people you picture, they already know you don't know. So you aren't really hiding anything. So you need to come clean.
Lots of, it's okay to say you don't know things. What's really impressive is saying, I don't know, but I'll find out, and then following up the next day with the answer to whatever it was, or somebody that can. So it's it's okay to say I don't know, or I don't know things, but it's not okay to not follow up or not figure it out. I would say, or figure out or ask me for help to help you figure it out.
Yeah, I just don't think there are any single traits to look at, but I go back to what I said originally. We won't invest in anybody that isn't honest, and that's a big one. Honest
How
to
do you
themselves.
judge honesty? So let's talk about that for a second. What's honest to another person may not be honest to you, right? So I think perception is reality to some people. Yeah, thank you. Amen. Who said that? Amen. But so what I'm trying to get to is like, how do you judge like honesty? Like if we come from different backgrounds. So and this is a question for all of you guys. If we come from different backgrounds and I don't know what you know, right? And I'm not as skilled because I didn't learn this from 12-year-old up, and I grew up just trying to figure out how to eat. Like, how do you discern whether a person is being honest and just like really don't know but trying to impress you?
No, that's a good question because it's a process. So for us, what we found out is it takes us about 60 days to do a deal.
Right.
You went through that. And over a 60-day period, and I'm talking about honesty, integrity of honesty. When we're doing the 60-day diligence process, you get to know somebody.
Right.
And we almost intentionally do it for 60 days because it's really difficult to bullshit anybody continuously over a 60-day period. So the facade comes down in 60 days. So that's one thing we look at.
Yeah. I was going to chime in there. So I'm a mom, right? I have children. And so for me, honesty always comes from you admitting before I have the evidence, right? And so, right? And so for me, you talk about due diligence, it's not something I find out in due diligence. It's because you've expressed it to me while we're having those conversations before we went to due diligence. And so I know pure confidence, but I had a person who had a gap, right? In their record, and everyone has a gap. And they didn't upfront tell me why the gap was there, and I had to go and investigate and find out why later. So for me, honesty happens, it's when it happens, right? And I like for it to happen up front, just say, hey, listen, I had an issue, I had to take 2 years off or whatever, and tell me up front, versus me having to find it later on in due diligence.
Yeah, and I think I experienced that with Brett, like right in the beginning. I was like, hey man, look, I just want you to know these things before we go down the road so you don't waste your time and I don't waste my time. I think you appreciated it up front, right? So we only have a few more minutes. So thank you all for being on the panel. I know it was super dope for everybody here to hear from you guys. But I want to end with one question. I'm about to make a joke about Mary cutting me a check, but that was too much.
I was going to ask you were going to ask about that.
Yes, already asked. If a founder want to get in touch with you, like how do they do that? Because I know everybody's going to like bombard you after this is done and say, give me money. So let's get that out of the way so you can actually leave at some point tonight, right? So how does founder get in touch with you?
I'm really easy to find. My email is all over the place. Just email me. I honestly talk to Clarence, bombard Clarence, then he'll introduce you. It's my door is pretty much open. Sometimes it might take a couple weeks, but I'm always willing to talk to founders. I'm always willing to talk to founders.
Yeah, you can take my email. It's david.russick@russickgroup.com. Please refer to this because I do get a lot of emails from places I have no idea who they are. So it's good to get this I would call a warm introduction of sorts. But anyway, generally what I do rather than coffee meetings is I'll get on the phone, explain the process. That way I can do a lot more people in a given period of time than I can traveling somewhere to have a cup of coffee. So forgive me if I'm not meeting you personally, but we'll talk to you or at least send you back an email to let you know how to get in front of Gopher Angels in the process.
Great, so I work out of the Fueled Collective space downtown. My name is Mary Grove. My email is mary.grove@revolution.com. And I think the best way you could help me is to, if you do choose to reach out to me, you could actually send me a summary of your idea, what it is you're working on, or how I can help you, versus just emailing to meet up, because I admit I'm on the road most of the time. So if you can help, and that goes for anyone, if you can help us understand what the ask is or how we can help you, that would be supremely welcome.
So I live on LinkedIn, so Anton Vincent on LinkedIn. Like Mary, I'm on the road a lot. I'm based here in Minneapolis, living in Minneapolis, but I'm here, probably a couple of days a week in the weekends. So again, LinkedIn. And then again, reference to the event, because I always get hit up from a variety of areas and sources.
I can't even spell my own name some days. I'm approaching 60. Rendersi.com, RENDERSI.com, and then there's only 6 of us. And I'm the guy with no hair at the top of the page. But a couple things. Know what we do, and our website doesn't do a good job of this. If you're pre-revenue, it better be very compelling. We just don't do much pre-revenue. I don't care if you have sold only 2 things of whatever you're doing. But unless you have a we got hit up by a guy recently that came to us with a purchase order from Target for 40 stores, and that was a different story. And he had only done 1 test store with them. That's a different story. So we need to see a path for commercialization, and then know that we probably won't do something if it's not generally in the consumer. If it doesn't touch the consumer in some way, it can be a consumer service. But revenue, consumer, and then a crisp, nice email or a deck. And if we come back to you and say it's not worth your time, it's not because we're being selfish, it's not worth your time. The other thing that we do is if it's not for us, we usually will shoot 2 or 3 names your way.
I have a really long last name, so it's lisagolsonarmstrong.com@gmail.com. And LinkedIn works well. I hang out at the Coven. I think I mentioned that plug earlier. Sorry to my folks over here. And third is Pipeline Angels, and we are going to do our next pitch summit in the fall. So there's an application online at Pipeline Angels for those of you who fit the demographic description.
Awesome. So can we give a round of applause to our... So I want to talk about sharing for a second, because truly, come on. So when we started this event, or she started this event, and she asked me to help, we said, hey, if we can get 50 people there, this would be the dopest event. There's never been an all-black panel ever in Minnesota history, ever, right? And when she told me about the idea, I said, man, this is awesome, this is great, what can I do to help? And she has been working tirelessly, for the last, how many weeks? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, forever, something like that.
The worst part was getting all these
yes,
thank you.
Because you guys know how VCRs, but painted. But no, seriously, she has been working her tail off to make this event happen. And so I want us to give a standing ovation to Sharon, because she's
here to support this. And as I said,
you can sit down now.
This building an inclusive tech economy is a passion for me. It's something that I am committed to seeing happen, and tonight is, for me, it's just the beginning. And so I really, really do value and appreciate each of you coming out tonight, and ask each of you to make it a commitment as well to help build an inclusive tech economy here in the Twin Cities. It's a benefit. It benefits all of us, and it's what we need. And I know that we can do it here in the Twin Cities. More importantly, here in the city of St. Paul. So thank you again for coming out. Thanks to co-founder Antoinette. I can't do this without her. She is Greg, who's here from Ohio, who had this idea in 2009 to start a Blacks in Technology group, and so thank you for being here. And I want to see every one of you in October at the Blacks in Tech Conference. So, yes. Thanks, Clarence. Clarence told me yesterday, Sharon, you need to learn to delegate. You can't do all of this. You are the CIO of the city of St. Paul, so I'm gonna need you to not always feel like you gotta go get the Cokes, you gotta go get the ice. It's like you can delegate some of these things, and so I was like, I received that. Okay.
So we have this space until about, I'm looking at Scott when I say this, till like 9 o'clock.
We have to be out of here at 9.
About to be out at 9. So find somebody that you don't know, meet somebody that you've never met before, hound these investors so you can try to get money from them. Stick around and get to know each other, because there's nothing stronger than your network, and I am a testament of that. So thank you all for coming tonight. Another person I want to make sure you guys know, Brennan Townley, can you raise your hand? He has money, find him. People are taking pictures and everything. So again, seriously, thank you all for coming tonight. Go talk to somebody you don't know, but you got to get the hell out of here at 9 o'clock. So,
Scott, thank you for making this space and place available for us. This is what we need.
Thank you, Scott.